The coffee shop collision. Melody Chen balanced her daughter's lunchbox on her hip while fumbling for her apartment keys. The morning routine, as familiar as breathing. Her 6-year-old Emma tugged at her mother's uniform shirt, already stained with yesterday's coffee grounds that wouldn't wash out completely. "Mama, why do you have to work at the fancy place today?" Emma asked, her voice carrying the innocent curiosity that always made Melody's heart squeeze with both love and guilt. "Fancy places pay better, sweetheart," Melody replied, finally managing to unlock their door. The small apartment felt even smaller in the morning light, with Emma's drawings covering every available wall space and textbooks, scattered across the dining table where Melody studied accounting at night. After dropping Emma at school, Melody drove across town to Bellingham Heights, where glass towers stretched toward the sky and people wore suits that cost more than her monthly rent. The Roasted Bean occupied the ground floor of the most prestigious building, its interior designed with exposed brick and Edison bulbs that screamed expensive minimalism. "Remember, we serve a very particular clientele here," her manager Derek explained during the brief orientation. "These are executives, entrepreneurs, people who value efficiency and quality. No small talk unless they initiate it." Melody nodded, tying her apron with practiced ease. She had worked in coffee shops before, but never one where a single cup cost $12. The morning rush began at precisely 7:30. Melody found her rhythm quickly, her hands moving with practiced efficiency as she crafted elaborate drinks with names she had to memorize phonetically. The customers moved like a well-choreographed dance, each knowing their place in line, their orders flowing in predictable patterns. Then Benjamin Cross walked in. Melody recognized him immediately. Not from personal acquaintance, but from the business magazines Emma liked to flip through at the library. His company, Nexus Innovations, had been featured on countless covers, and his face had become synonymous with the tech boom transforming their city. In person, he seemed smaller somehow, more human, though his presence still commanded attention. He approached the counter with the measured pace of someone whose time was calculated in thousands of dollars per minute. His order was simple: large black coffee, no cream, no sugar. Melody appreciated the straightforwardness after a morning of triple-shot, half-calf oat milk lattes with extra foam. "One black coffee, large," she repeated, moving toward the machine. "Actually," Benjamin said, his voice carrying a slight hesitation that seemed out of character, "could you make that a medium? Large seems wasteful if I'm just going to let half of it get cold." Melody paused, surprised by the consideration. Most customers in this place treated coffee like fuel, consuming it regardless of taste or temperature. She adjusted the cup size and began the pour, aware that Benjamin remained at the counter instead of stepping aside like the others. "You're new here?" he observed, not quite a question. "Started today," Melody confirmed, focusing on the steady stream of coffee. "Still learning the rhythm. It's different from other places." She looked up, meeting his eyes for the first time. They were darker than they appeared in photographs, with a depth that suggested more complexity than the business articles captured. "Every place has its own personality. This one's just more polished." Benjamin nodded thoughtfully. "That's a diplomatic way to put it." Melody handed him the cup, their fingers briefly touching as he accepted it. His hands were softer than she expected, lacking the calluses of someone who worked with them for a living. "Will that be all?" "Yes, thank you," he said, but lingered for a moment longer. "What's your name, Melody?" "Thank you, Melody. I'm Benjamin. I know who you are, Mr. Cross." He winced slightly. "Just Benjamin, please. Mr. Cross makes me sound like my father." Before Melody could respond, Derek appeared at her elbow, his smile tight with the kind of professional anxiety that came from recognizing important customers. "Mr. Cross, wonderful to see you again. I hope everything is to your satisfaction." "Perfect as always," Benjamin replied, though his eyes remained on Melody. "I'll see you tomorrow, Melody." The morning continued its relentless pace, but Melody found herself glancing toward the door more frequently than necessary. Benjamin's interaction had been brief, barely 5 minutes, yet it lingered in her mind like a song she couldn't shake. During her lunch break, she sat in the small employee area behind the shop, eating a sandwich she had packed at home while reviewing notes for her evening accounting class. The textbook was filled with highlighted passages about profit margins and cash flow, subjects that felt abstract when her own finances consisted of counting tips and hoping the car would start another week. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rosa, her best friend and fellow single mother. "How's the fancy job? Are you hobnobbing with millionaires yet?" Melody typed back. "Just making coffee for people who can afford to spend more on caffeine than I make in a day?" But even as she sent the message, she thought about Benjamin's slight smile when she called the shop polished, and the way he had asked her name like it mattered. In her experience, wealthy people rarely bothered learning the names of service workers, treating them as interchangeable parts in their daily routines. The afternoon shift brought fewer customers, mostly tourists and local residents who worked different schedules. Melody used the quieter hours to memorize the complicated drink recipes and learn the locations of various supplies. Derek praised her efficiency, noting that several customers had complimented her work. "You're a natural," he said. "Most people take weeks to feel comfortable here." "I've had practice," Melody replied, thinking of the dozen different jobs she had held over the past 6 years, each one teaching her to adapt quickly and work efficiently as closing time approached. She found herself wondering if Benjamin would return tomorrow, and more surprisingly, hoping that he would. The thought puzzled her. She had learned to be cautious around men, especially those whose worlds operated on different principles than hers. But something about his genuine politeness and the way he had chosen the smaller coffee size to avoid suggested depths worth exploring. The evening ahead stretched before her, picking up Emma from aftercare, helping with homework, preparing dinner from whatever remained in their sparse refrigerator, then several hours of accounting study after Emma fell asleep. It was a routine that left little room for wondering about enigmatic tech billionaires and their reasons for lingering at coffee counters. Yet as she untied her apron and gathered her things, Melody realized she was already looking forward to tomorrow morning, curious to see if Benjamin Cross would prove to be as intriguing as their brief conversation suggested. Bridging two worlds. Benjamin's routine had been unshakable for 3 years. Arrive at the Roasted Bean at 8:15 a.m., order black coffee, review emails while drinking it, arrive at the office by 8:45. The predictability anchored his days in a world where markets fluctuated wildly and business decisions carried consequences. But for the past 2 weeks, his routine had developed an unexpected variable named Melody Chen. "You're early today," Melody observed as he approached the counter at 8:10. Smile genuine in a way that still caught him off guard. The morning rush hadn't begun yet, leaving the shop in a rare state of calm. "Meeting got moved up," Benjamin replied, though the truth was more complicated. He had rescheduled the meeting himself, drawn by the possibility of a few extra minutes of conversation before the daily chaos began. "Black coffee, medium," Melody said, already reaching for the cup. "Oh, I made some Ethiopian single origin this morning if you want to try something different." Benjamin hesitated. Change made him uncomfortable, especially in small routines. That provided stability. But something about Melody's enthusiasm when she talked about different coffee varieties intrigued him. "What makes it special?" "It's got these bright, almost floral notes," she explained, her hands moving gracefully as she prepared the alternative, completely different from the dark roasts most people associate with coffee. "It's like discovering that something you thought you knew has hidden depths." The metaphor wasn't lost on Benjamin. He accepted the cup and took a tentative sip, surprised by the complexity of flavors. "It's excellent. How did you learn so much about coffee?" "YouTube University," Melody laughed. "When you work in coffee shops, you pick things up. Plus, I like understanding the things I spend my time doing. This makes them feel less like just jobs and more like skills." Before Benjamin could respond, the morning rush descended like a wave. He found himself reluctant to leave, instead claiming a corner table where he could observe Melody work. She moved with an efficiency that spoke of years of practice, but also with a warmth that transformed routine transactions into brief human connections. An elderly man struggling with his wallet found her, patiently waiting rather than tapping her fingers. A frazzled mother with a crying baby received her coffee with a gentle, rough morning. somehow made the woman's shoulders relax. Melody treated each customer as if they were the only person in the world, despite the line stretching to the door. Fascinating, isn't it? Benjamin looked up to find Jonathan Wade sliding into the opposite chair, his business partner's expression amused. Jonathan had been his closest friend since college, one of the few people who could read Benjamin's moods accurately. "What's fascinating?" Benjamin asked, though he knew he'd been caught. "You've been coming here for 3 years and never stayed longer than 5 minutes. Now you're nursing a cup of coffee and watching the staff like you're conducting a time study. I'm just enjoying the atmosphere." Jonathan followed Benjamin's gaze to where Melody was explaining the difference between cappuccino and macchiato to a confused tourist. "She's lovely, I'll give you that. Duh. But Ben, you realize she's probably not in your usual demographic." "Demographic is that? Women who went to Ivy League schools and have trust funds?" Benjamin felt a flash of irritation. "I don't only date women with trust funds. No, you also date women who run their own companies or have advanced degrees in economics. Same social stratum, different packaging." The observation stung because it was accurate. Benjamin's romantic history consisted of women who moved in similar circles, attended the same charity galas, and understood the unspoken rules of his world. Relationships that made sense on paper but never quite translated to genuine connection. "She's intelligent," Benjamin said quietly, "and kind. She notices things about people. I'm sure she is. But Ben, have you considered what you two actually have in common? She's a single mother working in a coffee shop. You're a tech CEO who just bought a 3rd vacation home. The gap between your worlds isn't just about money." Benjamin wanted to argue, but Jonathan's words echoed doubts he'd been pushing aside. What did he really know about Melody beyond their brief morning conversations? Her favorite books, her dreams for the future, her thoughts on raising a child alone in an expensive city? That evening, Benjamin found himself researching single parenthood, statistics, minimum wage calculations, and the cost of childcare in their city. The numbers painted a picture of challenges he'd never had to consider. Decisions between necessities that he'd never had to make. Meanwhile, across town, Melody was having her own conversation about bridging worlds. "You're glowing lately, Rosa," Martinez observed, settling into Melody's cramped kitchen with 2 cups of tea. Rosa's daughter, Sophia, was in Emma's class, and their friendship had been forged in the trenches of single motherhood. New face cream or new man? "It's not like that," Melody protested, though she felt heat rise in her cheeks. "We just talk sometimes, at work." And this mysterious man who makes you smile at random moments throughout the day. What does he do? Melody busied herself with rearranging items on the counter. "He works in tech, programmer, designer, IT support. He's more on the business side." Rosa's eyebrows rose. "Melody Chen, are you being evasive? Since when do you not tell me everything about men?" "Because there's nothing to tell. He's just a customer who's nice to talk to." "A customer who has you reading business magazines during lunch breaks." Melody had hoped Rosa wouldn't notice the copy of Forbes tucked into her purse, folded open to an article about Nexus's Innovation's latest acquisition. "I'm trying to understand different industries. It's educational. Educational." Rosa's tone was flat. "Melody, please, tell me you're not developing feelings for some unavailable tech bro." "He's not unavailable, and he's not a bro. He's thoughtful and quiet, and he asks about my day, like he actually cares about the answer." "What's his name?" The question hung in the air like a challenge. Melody knew that once she said it, Rosa would likely recognize it, and the conversation would shift into territory she wasn't ready to explore. Benjamin Cross. Rosa's teacup clattered against the saucer. Benjamin Cross, as in Nexus Innovations. Benjamin Cross, as in worth hundreds of millions Benjamin Cross. You know who he is? Melody, he was on the cover of Time magazine last month. He's been called the next Steve Jobs. His company's AI platform is revolutionizing how businesses operate. Rosa leaned forward, her expression serious. "Are you telling me you've been flirting with one of the most powerful men in the city?" "I haven't been flirting. We've just been having conversations." About what? Quantum computing? Venture capital? The challenges of managing a multinational corporation? About books, mostly, and coffee, and Emma sometimes? Rose's expression softened slightly. He asks about Emma. Yesterday he asked if she likes to read, and when I said yes, he wanted to know what her favorite books are. When I mentioned she's obsessed with this series about a girl who invents things, he lit up, said his niece loves the same books. That's sweet, but Melody, you need to be realistic. This man lives in a completely different world.
He probably
spends more on dinner than you make in a month. I know that. Do you? Because I've seen you fall for unavailable men before, and this one isn't just emotionally unavailable, he's societally unavailable. You think he's going to bring you to board meetings? Introduce you to his billionaire friends? What happens when Emma needs new school shoes and his idea of a casual dinner out costs more than your rent? The questions hit harder because they echoed Melody's own fears. She had been enjoying the morning conversations, the way Benjamin's face brightened when he saw her, the increasing complexity of their discussions. But Rosa was right about the practical realities. Maybe you're overthinking this, Melody said weakly. And maybe you're underthinking it. Look, I want you to be happy. You deserve someone who appreciates how amazing you are, but I also don't. Want to see you get hurt by someone who's probably just amusing himself with a working-class fantasy? That night, as Melody helped Emma with homework, she found herself examining her feelings more critically. Benjamin's interest seemed genuine, but was it based on who she actually was, or on some romanticized version of authenticity he found refreshing? Emma looked up from her math problems. Mama, why do you keep sighing? Just thinking about grown-up? Things, sweetheart. Are you worried about money again? The question pierced Melody's heart. Emma was too young to carry such awareness, but their circumstances had made her perceptive about financial stress. No, baby, everything's fine. But as she tucked Emma into bed and returned to her accounting textbooks, Melody wondered if fine was enough. She had built a stable life for them, but it was a life of careful calculations and constant vigilance. The idea of letting someone into that world, especially someone whose casual spending exceeded her annual income, felt both thrilling and terrifying. The next morning, Benjamin arrived at his usual time, but something had shifted. Melody could sense his hesitation, the way he seemed to be weighing his words more carefully. Good morning, she said, preparing his coffee before he could order good morning. Listen, Melody, I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner sometime. Outside of work, I mean. The invitation hung between them, loaded with possibilities and complications. Melody felt her heart accelerate, but Rosa's warnings echoed in her mind. I'd like that, she heard herself saying, surprising them both. But I should mention that I have a 6-year-old daughter. My social life is pretty limited. I'd like to meet her, Benjamin said without hesitation. If you're comfortable with that? And in that moment, Melody realized that despite all the rational arguments against it, she was willing to find out. Where this unlikely connection might lead? Love's true foundation 3 months after their first dinner together. Melody found herself standing in Benjamin's penthouse kitchen, watching him attempt to make pancakes while Emma provided detailed instructions from her perch on a bar stool. The bubbles have to pop and stay popped, Emma explained with the patience of someone who had clearly inherited her mother's teaching instincts. That's how you know it's ready to flip. Benjamin nodded seriously, spatula hovering over the pan. Pop and stay popped. Got it. Melody marveled at how naturally this scene had evolved. Their first dinner had been at a quiet bistro where Benjamin had listened intently as she explained the complexities of single parenthood. Her dreams of finishing her accounting degree and her fierce protectiveness over Emma's childhood. He had shared his own story, the loneliness of success, the pressure of constant decision-making, and his growing realization that professional achievements felt hollow without personal connection. Success. Benjamin announced as he successfully flipped a pancake, Emma cheering from the sidelines. That's a good one, Emma declared. Almost as good as Mama's. High praise indeed, Benjamin said, catching Melody's eye with a smile that had become achingly familiar. The past months had been a careful dance of adjustment. Benjamin had approached their relationship with the same methodical attention he applied to business decisions. but with a gentleness that revealed the man behind the corporate reputation. He had learned Emma's schedule, her favorite foods, her bedtime stories. He had attended her school play, sitting in the audience with the same focus he brought to board meetings. More surprising, too. Melody was how naturally Emma had accepted Benjamin's presence. Her daughter, usually cautious around new people, had warmed to him with an openness that both touched and terrified Melody. Emma had never known her father, and Melody had been careful not to introduce men who might disappear, leaving another absence in her daughter's life. "Can Benjamin come to the community center with us today?" Emma asked, drowning her pancakes in syrup with the enthusiasm of someone who rarely got such treats. Melody hesitated. Today was the monthly volunteer day at the Riverside Community Center, where she helped with literacy programs and Emma played with other children whose families struggled financially. It was a part of their life that felt intensely personal, a reminder of where they came from and how easily they could return there. "I'd like to come," Benjamin said quietly, "if you're comfortable with it." "It's not glamorous," Melody warned. "We read to kids whose parents work multiple jobs, help with homework, serve lunch to families who might not eat otherwise. It sounds important." An hour later, they walked through the doors of the community center together. The building was old, but well-maintained. It's filled with the cheerful chaos of children's voices and the warm smell of institutional cooking. Melody had been volunteering here for 2 years, drawn by the desire to give back to a community that had supported her during her darkest moments. Melody. Carmen Rodriguez, the center's director, embraced her warmly before turning curious eyes to Benjamin. "And who's this?" "This is Benjamin," Melody said, noting how he stepped forward with an easy smile, no trace of the discomfort she had feared. "Benjamin Cross," he said, extending his hand. "Melody's told me wonderful things about the work you do here." Carmen's eyebrows rose slightly at the name recognition, but she recovered quickly. "Well, any friend of Melody's is welcome." "Can you read 2 children without putting them to sleep?" "I can try." What followed was a revelation. Benjamin settled into the reading corner with a group of 6-year-olds. Opening a picture book about a mouse who dreamed of flying, his voice took on different tones for each character, and soon the children were giggling and asking questions. Melody watched from across the room, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. "That's quite a catch," Carmen murmured, appearing at her elbow. "Most rich guys who wander in here want to write a check and leave. Actually seems to be enjoying himself." "He's full of surprises," Melody admitted. The afternoon continued with Benjamin, throwing himself into every activity, helping teenagers with college applications, serving lunch to elderly residents, and somehow ending up in an animated discussion with a group of kids about video game design. He moved through the center with genuine interest, asking questions and listening to answers with the same attention he'd once given to merger negotiations. "Mr. Benjamin," one of the teenagers called out, "Melody says you run a big company." Hiring, Benjamin laughed, always looking for good people. "What are you studying? Computer programming? Want to make games someday? That's fantastic. Here's my card. Email me your portfolio when you're ready." Melody watched the exchange with a mixture of pride and concern. Benjamin's generosity was genuine, but she worried about the expectations. It might create the disappointment if opportunities didn't materialize. Later that evening, after Emma had fallen asleep, Melody and Benjamin sat on her small balcony, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the city lights twinkle below. "Thank you for today," Melody said quietly. "I wasn't sure how you'd react to that environment." "You thought I'd be uncomfortable? I thought you might feel out of place? Or that you'd want to fix everything with money?" Benjamin was quiet for a moment. "I did want to fix things. But spending time there made me realize that the problems are more complex than I understood." Carmen mentioned they're losing their lease next year, buildings being sold to developers. Melody's heart sank. "I knew they were struggling, but I didn't realize it was that serious. Not just with money, but with a real solution." I've been thinking about this for weeks, actually. Nexus has been looking for ways to make a meaningful community impact. What if we partnered with the center to create something sustainable? Job training programs, technology, access, Maybe even help them find a permanent location. Melody studied his face in the dim light. "You're serious about this?" "I'm serious about a lot of things I never expected to care about. Like whether Emma's friend Sophia gets the tutoring she needs, or whether Mrs. Patterson has enough groceries for the week. Benjamin, you can't save everyone." "I know, but I can try to make a difference where I'm able. I can do it alongside someone who actually understands the community's needs." The conversation shifted something fundamental between them. This wasn't just about their personal relationship anymore. It was about building something together that extended beyond their individual worlds. Over the following weeks, Benjamin threw himself into the community center project with characteristic intensity. He worked with Carmen to understand the center's needs, consulted with urban planners about sustainable development, and began putting together a proposal that would create a model for corporate community partnerships. But it was his relationship with Emma that truly transformed him. Melody watched him learn to braid hair for school picture day, master the art of bedtime negotiations, and develop strong opinions about the relative merits of different animated movies. He approached fatherhood with the same methodical care he brought to everything else, but with a tenderness that revealed depths she was still discovering. "He's going to ask you to marry him," Rosa announced one afternoon, watching Benjamin and Emma build an elaborate Lego castle on Melody's living room floor. "We've only been together for months," Melody protested. "Look at him. He's already moved in emotionally. His toothbrush is in your bathroom, his coffee's in your kitchen, and he knows Emma's schedule better than some biological fathers." Melody couldn't argue with the observation. Benjamin had integrated himself into their lives with a completeness that felt both natural and overwhelming. "Are you ready for that?" Rosa asked more gently. "I don't know. 6 months ago, I thought. I had my life figured out. Steady job, school at night, raising Emma on my own. Now, everything's changing. Change isn't always bad. It's not the change I'm worried about. It's the permanence. What if this is all new and exciting for him now, but in a year he realizes he wants something different? Someone who can travel. With him, attend corporate events, fit into his world more easily." Rosa was quiet for a moment. "What does he say when you talk about this? That he can't imagine his life without us. We're his family now, and what do you say?" Melody watched Benjamin patiently explain to Emma why the castle needed a stronger foundation. His voice gentle and his attention completely focused on her daughter. "I say I love him, and that terrifies me." 2 weeks later, Benjamin proposed during a quiet Sunday morning in the community center's garden. Emma was showing him her favorite hiding spot among the tomato plants when he pulled out a simple ring and asked Melody to be his wife. "Yes," she said without hesitation, surprising herself with the certainty in her voice. "Really?" Emma asked, bouncing with excitement. "Does this mean Benjamin gets to be my dad? If you want me to be," Benjamin said seriously, getting down to Emma's eye level. "I want you to be. But you have to promise not to leave us." "I promise." "Emma, forever and always." The wedding was small. It's held in the community center's main room with Carmen officiating and the regular volunteers serving as witnesses. Instead of expensive flowers, they decorated with children's artwork and pictures of the families they served. Benjamin's business associates mingled with single mothers and retired teachers, creating an unlikely but warm congregation. In his speech, Benjamin talked about learning that true success wasn't measured in profit margins, but in the richness of human connection. Melody spoke about the courage required to let someone into your carefully constructed life and the joy of discovering that love really could transcend boundaries. A year later, the Riverside Community Center reopened in a beautiful new building. Funded by a partnership between Nexus Innovations and 3 other tech companies, the ribbon-cutting ceremony featured local politicians, business leaders, and most importantly, the families who would benefit from the expanded programs. MA, now 7, and confidently introducing Benjamin as her dad to anyone who would listen. Cut the ribbon with a pair of comically oversized scissors. The crowd cheered, but Melody's attention was on Benjamin, who stood with his arm around her shoulders, watching their daughter with unmistakable pride. "No regrets?" Benjamin asked quietly. "None," Melody replied, meaning it completely. Their love story had become something larger than either of them had imagined, a bridge between worlds, a catalyst for change, and proof that genuine connection could indeed transform not just individual lives but entire communities. They had learned that love wasn't about finding someone who fit into your existing life, but about building something new together, something that honored both your past and your shared future. As the community center filled with families, children, and hope, Melody realized that their unlikely romance had become something even more powerful, a foundation for lasting change. Built on the simple truth that when two people choose to love courageously, the ripples extend far beyond their own hearts.